The Soviets put up the Berlin Wall to prevent East Berliners from fleeing west. It was put up in 1961 because the lack of intellectuals was hurting East Germany. The Berlin Wall was a physical barrier, but it also represented the disconnect between the Berliners with the separation of their families. In 1989, due to a botched speech from Egon Krenz, the borders were seen as open and East Berliners flooded across the border into West Berlin. The wall physically fell in 1991, which brought the families back together. It's 1945. The German Reich is collapsing as the Allied and Comintern forces push into Berlin from west and east respectively. After the Reich capitulates, the territories in Germany and former Austria are occupied. 4 years later, West and East Germany were formed out of the occupied territories. The Allied powers wished that democracies be empowered in all European countries, but the Soviets betrayed them by creating communist states in Eastern Europe. The German city of Berlin was split between west and east like the rest of Germany. The half of Berlin that was owned by West Germany was completely cut off from the rest of the country. Before the West German state was formed, the Soviets wanted all of Berlin for themselves. They blocked the Allied powers from entering the city and tried to starve West Berlin. The Allies refused to back down, with the President of the United States, Harry Truman, believing it would start the further spread of communism in Europe. The Allies decided that they would start supplying the city with planes. For about a year, 2.3 million tons of cargo were delivered to West Berlin. Sometimes there were planes taking off and landing in Berlin every 30 seconds. There was a total of 300,000 flights. In 1953, many workers in East Germany demanded better conditions, both for living and for working. They also demanded elections which had previously been denied. The revolt was responded to with force. Around 1960, East Germany was in a recession and conditions got even worse. The government was seizing businesses which angered the people. More and more intellectuals were fleeing west, which hurt East Germany. They had to do something about the brain drain. In 1960, Walter Ulbricht becomes the head of East Germany. Next year, he ordered the construction of the Berlin Wall overnight. Many Berliners woke up to see their city divided by barbed wire. Before this point, many people would live in East Berlin and work in West Berlin. When the wall started construction, many people are trapped on either side, with some people on the other side trapped from their own home. Many people tried to jump over the border from the west while it was still a line of barbed wire, such as border guard Konrad Schumann, who had his picture taken while he was mid-jump. The East German government stated that the wall was to keep fascism out of their country. West Berliners, however, called this wall the Wall of Shame. They were angry at East Germany, but also the United States. That is because they did nothing to stop the Soviet assertion. Eventually, because of foreign pressure, the United States garrisoned West Berlin with extra troops. However, the small increase of 1,500 troops was tiny and didn't do much to intimidate the other side. That changes in October of 1961 when East German border guards started searching the identification of visitors from the other side, which violated terms agreed upon in the Potsdam Conference. East Germany believed the West would just shut up about that, but they didn't, so the United States sent E. Allen Leitner, a diplomat, to East Berlin, but they refused inspection. Border guards demanded identification, but Leitner demanded a Soviet official to review his identification. None were available, and attention rose. The troops the U.S. previously ordered were prepared for the situation, so Leitner soon had troops surrounding his car, who escorted him into East Berlin. Many people continued resisting identification checks from border guards. As tensions rose, tanks were sent to Checkpoint Charlie. The Soviets drove their own tanks up to the other side of Checkpoint Charlie. Eventually, the tanks backed up, and the Europeans were slightly less afraid of being nuked to oblivion. In the mid-1960s, both John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King visited Berlin to inspire the people. MLK even went to the east side in 1964. After that, nothing really happened for a while, except for Erich Honecker becoming the leader of East Germany in 1976. Then in 1985, things started to move again as Mikhail Gorbachev becomes leader of the USSR. He tried to reform the Soviet Union and other countries slowly. In 1987, Ronald Reagan visited West Berlin and gave the speech along the lines of,
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
In September 1989, people got angrier and angrier at East Germany, but Erich Honecker stays firm, stating that the wall will last 50, even 100 years. The next month, Gorbachev visited East Berlin on the 40th anniversary of East Germany. People saw him as a liberator as he stopped helping the regime suppress rebellion. Eventually, the borders of East Germany were opened fully with its new leader, Egon Krenz, and people poured out into the western neighboring countries. The wall fell and the Eastern Bloc fell apart 2 years later. That concludes the story of the Berlin Wall, but the legacy still lives on. Thanks for watching.